what the Jamaat-e-Islami-led regime in Bangladesh is doing is ethnic cleansing. Let us recognize one factor very clearly, that what happened in August 2024, July and August 2024, was nothing except a repeat of 1971.
While the world is busy observing Donald Trump's diplomacy in the Middle East and Pakistan selling its minerals to United States, there's something on India's eastern border which needs to be looked out for, which needs to be observed and analyzed. We're talking about Bangladesh, and who better than Ambassador Veena Sikri to join us in Samvad for this session on Bangladesh. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, Ma'am, Muhammad Yunus, the chief advisor, the president, call him whatever you might. He was in New York during the United Nations General Assembly session, and in New York, he gave an interview to Mehdi Hasan, who was a journalist with Al Jazeera, but now I believe he's an independent journalist. Where when asked about the atrocities, the violence against Hindus, Yunus said that it was all fake news, which was the speciality of India. And when pressed further, he said that this was a normal kind of a problem. He called it a land problem, neighborly problem, that sort of very routine stuff. The government of India, on the other hand, while responding to a question in the Lok Sabha during 2024, they gave figures of the violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. So in 2022, the number was 47. In 23, it rose to 302. And in 2024, the figure rose dramatically to 2,200. And this data is till the 8th of December 2024. There are independent media handles. The New York Times is calling out Yunus for the violence against Hindus. But he is unperturbed. He's not perturbed at all. So my thing is I want you to assess whether this conflict is more of a neighborly stuff as Yunus claims it to be, and India and as Indians and Hindus we are paying too much attention into the matter, or do you see Yunus playing loose with the facts?
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your program, and thank you for raising these very important questions about Bangladesh. In fact, I think it's the other way around. I think that while the Indian media pays a lot of attention to Pakistan and every little event in Pakistan is covered in great detail, they are not paying enough attention to Bangladesh. And whatever little has come in the Indian media is the correct news. In fact, I think they should have probed more and more in detail and brought out much more of the gory details that the people of Bangladesh are suffering. And I think that one must remember that in a population of, let's say, around 170 million or so, about 10% are non-Muslims. They're saying that the Muslims are 90, maybe 91%. So 9 to 10%, you're looking at something like 17 million people in all. And they have suffered the most violent and consistently violent abuse since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka on 5th of August, 2024. Now, I think that, it's all right for interim chief advisor, Mohammed Yunus to dismiss this as, oh, normal stuff and all. But this displays a real lack of humanity. He doesn't care that 10% of his population is being subject to such, absolutely horrendous rape, killings, lynchings, grabbing of property, grabbing of businesses, and absolutely there are the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the tribals, and in addition, the Sufis and the Ahmadiyyas. So it's not only the non-Muslims. So I would say that if you add the Sufis and the Ahmadiyyas, there's much more than 10% of Bangladesh population under attack. And consistently under attack for more than 1 year. And it's not only the Indian media that has covered this. It has been covered by BBC. They have published visuals of it. It's been covered in the British Parliament. It has been covered by UK groups, by USA groups, all over the world. In fact, it has become, such a tragedy that when, 17 million people are under this kind of siege on a daily basis, the world is choosing to ignore it. And I think this is the tragedy that we have to look at. And I think, as you said quite rightly, our Indian government has made a lot of very strong statements about it. There have been questions in Parliament which have been responded accurately. There is the Rights Action Group of India, which has really given detailed documentation about the attacks, when they took place, where they took place, who were the people injured. And all of us, I have personally, received feedback from individuals from all the communities, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, and the Ahmadiyyas and Sufis, that the pressure is on them to leave the country. So, in short, what the Jamaat-e-Islami-led regime in Bangladesh is doing is ethnic cleansing. They want to push all the non-Muslims out of the country. And in fact, I know people whose land was grabbed and then they received phone calls saying that, here's the money, take the money and go, leave the country. And this is what is happening. And in fact, this is the real tragedy of what is happening. And just 2 weeks ago, there was a brutal rape in Khagrachari, in the Chittagong Hill Tracts region of Bangladesh, with a young Buddhist girl, rape and killing. And there were riots. And there have been riots even earlier. And the people living there in Chittagong Hill Tracts say that the army is joining the killers. The army is protecting the Bengali settlers who are doing the rape and the killing.
So we saw this pattern in 1971 also. Do you see a repetition of the whole pattern? Because 71 also it was the Hindus who were ethnically cleansed. They were basically attacked, and the Awami League people. So is this a repeat of that pattern? Is this a cycle of a sort?
Well, let us say very clearly, let us recognize one factor very clearly, that what happened in August 2024, July and August 2024, was nothing except a repeat of 1971. Except that the same people were lined up on both sides. On one side were the Pakistanis, the Razakars, the Jamaat-e-Islami, and all the Islamist forces that were there in the then East Pakistan. On the other side were the vast majority of the Bangladeshi, then East Pakistan, but with Bangladeshi population, because they wanted freedom from the kind of genocide that had been unleashed on them. The genocide unleashed by Pakistan on Bangladesh, on then East Pakistan, covered everybody. It covered the Muslims, the Hindus, everybody. They wanted subjugation of East Pakistan. They wanted East Pakistan to be subjugated to West Pakistan, and they did not succeed because the 10 million refugees came into India. The Indian government took it up very strongly, and in the end, the Indian army and the Muktijoddhas, they fought together in a joint command, and they were victorious. So I think that this time in 2024, one can say 53 years after that happened, we saw the same powers coming together. The same, because again Pakistan was being backed by the USA. Again, Pakistan was being backed by the Western powers. And they were the conduit. And the conduit was the Jamaat-e-Islami, as it was in 1971. And this time, they were able to force Sheikh Hasina out of the country. And then after that, her plane had barely left the country, and complete violence was unleashed. I know that everybody has tried to justify it, and even the Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami, no, just for 3 days, And actually, we know it is still going on. And let me tell you one big difference between that time of 71 and now. In 1971, as I just said, all the people who were being attacked in the genocide, the ethnic cleansing of Bangladesh, they took refuge in India. 10 million of them came across. But this time, the younger generation of the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, and the tribals, and all of them, they said, no, we are not leaving the country, we are staying. And so they stayed back. They have stayed back. And in fact, the migration across the border had been remarkably little, considering the kind of, cruelties they have been subject to. And they were being organized by Chinmoy Das, who was, as you know, a former individual of the Ramakrishna Mission, and he was organizing them and getting great success. And he had meetings in Dhaka, in Chittagong, in Rangpur, and other places, and hundreds of thousands, even despite the meetings being banned, hundreds of thousands came to join. But then he was arrested, and he's still in jail, without bail, without having any trial having been started, without any charges having been filed. He's still in jail. What is the explanation for that? There is no explanation. So I think that this business of Mohammed Yunus, the interim chief advisor, who actually is an illegitimate and unconstitutional regime, him trying to dismiss it as fake news is a big travesty of the truth. And in fact, the truth is that these killings are still ongoing. And they're getting worse and worse because they want just the Wahhabis, they want just the Salafists and the Wahhabis and the extreme Islamist group to stay behind, and they want everybody else to leave the country. They want, and that is how Pakistan wants to control Bangladesh, because all this is controlled from Pakistan. The Pakistan army has already sent its senior officers to embed themselves with the Bangladesh army in all key positions. And they are planning this very systematically so that want to make sure that the Jamaat-e-Islami wins in the so-called fake elections they are planning for February.
Speaking of USA and the Western powers, ma'am, during the 2024 presidential campaign in the United States, now President Donald Trump, he had tweeted and strongly condemned the barbaric violence against Hindus, Christians, and other minorities who are getting attacked and looted by mobs in Bangladesh. Now, not much has changed since then, but the only thing which has changed is the image of Donald Trump and the bonhomie he displayed with Muhammad Yunus during the sidelines of the UNGA. And so while Hindu oppression has not changed, I mean, the reaction of the Western powers has started to change once again. So I'm trying to understand as to why this flip-flop from the situation, from a position of barbarism against Hindus to complete silence. What explains this?
Well, I think, first of all, that to recognize that President Trump actually said that during the campaign was an important recognition of the fact that that actually exists, and it was happening, and it continues to happen. Now, we also know that right till February of this year, when our Prime Minister Modi was there on an official visit, and in a press conference, he and President Trump were together, and President Trump clearly said, "I'm leaving Bangladesh to Prime Minister Modi." So, he was. But I think that since then, what has changed is that President Trump has also forgotten his own promise to his own people that he would end the deep state in the USA, because everybody knows that what happened in July, August of last year was actually monitored by the deep state of America. And they were the guiding force behind it. And they were the ones who had engineered all this through a series of trainings. And in fact, among the first things that President Trump did when he came to power for his second term at the end of January this year is that he disbanded the USAID. And I remember at that time, he gave a Twitter or a tweet or a statement, and he said that, why should I support the USAID? I see that from the fact that they're doing all these kind of trainings. What are these trainings that they're doing? Why do they need to do trainings? And so he disbanded them. But actually, those trainings were the ones that many people in Bangladesh have also written about, that they were focused on the youth. They were focused on the universities, and they were focused on getting together all the people who, for some reason or the other, were dissatisfied with the government in power, which at the time was Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And, through rap music and, all kinds of appeals to the younger generation, they trained them on how to take action. And then when this, even this whole business of the quota reforms, which, which even the Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami and which Muhammad Yunus speak about so much, that this was a quota reform, student reform movement against the quotas, and that they were unhappy, and so entirely a student-led revolution. This also is proved to be fake. And we know that it was not a student-led revolution at all, because Muhammad Yunus himself last year, when he went to New York for the UNGA, not this year, but last year, he said in a public meeting that, don't think it happened by itself. It was meticulously designed. And he introduced the sort of mastermind, as he called him, the mastermind behind this was a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir, Mahfouz Alam, who is now an advisor to the government. So actually, this was clearly planned. And you can see this, that the same playbook, the same trainings have taken place in Sri Lanka in 2022, in Bangladesh in 2024, and in Nepal in 2025. But in both Sri Lanka and in Nepal, I must say that, the planners, whoever they were, the external powers who planned it were not able to get their way, because in Sri Lanka, when of course, the youth were very angry with the Rajapaksa government, and they wanted Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign. They wanted the prime minister to resign. They wanted that all the 300 members of the Rajapaksa family who were positioned in various jobs all around the government and the country should resign. All this happened. But when it all happened, the youth did not take power in their hands. They gave it back to parliament. And they had an interim prime minister, they had an interim president, Ranil Wickremesinghe making him president. Then they've had elections, and a new government has been elected, and it's running and doing its own work in Sri Lanka. In Nepal, the same thing, that, you have this young people suddenly coming out and talking about, the reason being that social media has been shut down. Some excuse, excuse. And then the surprising part, that both in Bangladesh and in Nepal, you see within hours, not only that all this is happening, but all the institutions of authority, the institutions of democracy are under attack. The Singh Darbar, the administration building in Nepal is burnt. You can't burn a big building like that at 1 minute's notice. It requires time, it requires preparation. You can't do it. The parliament building burnt. A 15-story high Hilton hotel burnt. How can this happen in just a few seconds? They can't. It requires a lot of preparation, and no amount how many students there are, they can't just get together and say that you're going to say. So these are, really manipulated situations. But in Nepal, again, the army chief put his foot down. And at the end of the second day, said, I am going to take firm and determined action. Anybody causing violence and disruption will be dealt with. And the crowd just melted away. And then, they had talks, and they chose Sushila Karki, a very well-known chief justice. So in Bangladesh, I think maybe the army chief was either compromised, or he did not decide quickly enough, but he just let it go on and on and on. And even in Bangladesh, even the people who've been advisors to the government, the first round that appointed, they themselves are saying, how did the students, the people who died, the common man, they call the students, sometimes the people who had the guns in the hands were not the police, and these weapons were stolen by these students from the police station. They burnt about 400 police stations. They stole thousands and tens of thousands of weapons, and then they used that to attack the people and claim that it's the police who did it. Actually, the police has still not recovered in Bangladesh. So I think that however, rather than giving up the deep state in USA, to come back to the original question, rather than giving up the deep state in the USA, the deep state now seems to have co-opted, President Trump, and he's just acting on their playbook. And he's continuing with the support for an unconstitutional, illegitimate regime. And the question that, you push out the Awami League and don't allow them to take action. Just tell me, in any part of the world, even if you are dissatisfied, let's take even Sri Lanka, or let's take even Nepal. Has anybody said ban the parties from taking part in the elections? No. Nobody banned. In the Sri Lanka elections, no party was banned. There was so much anger against the Rajapaksa family. They got all the 300 members to resign. They got the president and the prime minister to resign. But when it came to elections, you follow democratic norms. You have free, fair, credible, and inclusive elections. That's what Sri Lanka did. And they've got a government of their choice. Similarly, in Nepal, is anybody saying to ban any party? Nobody's talking about banning any party. They're only talking about having free, fair, inclusive, and credible elections. Why in Bangladesh? Why have they banned the Awami League? And when Mohammed Yunus was questioned about this again during his recent visit to New York, he was interviewed by this. So he met somebody. He had many interviews, and again he was so evasive. Why have you banned the Awami League? No, we have not banned the Awami League. Well, then why aren't you allowing them to take part in elections? Oh, this is the election commission will decide. So he was very evasive in his answers. And the fact of the matter is that in Bangladesh, the people of Bangladesh are enormously unhappy with the present regime. And what the regime, illegitimate as it is, thought that once the Awami League is out of the picture and we ban them, then, the BNP also is there as a very big party, but the BNP is being sidelined. We saw in the recent students' elections in the Dhaka University and Jahangirnagar University that the BNP was completely sidelined. They were very confident they were going to come to power and we have a good agreement with Jamaat-e-Islami, and, we been in government together for 5 years and so on. So they were very confident that they were going to come to power in the university student union elections, but they were nowhere to be seen. The elections were completely rigged. They were completely one-sided. And in fact, after the second election in Jahangirnagar University, which was described as being totally rigged, the BNP said we're not going to take part in any more such elections. And so the whole election process has been stopped because everybody knows that unless the BNP, if both BNP and Awami League, who between them control about 80% of the popular vote, if they're not there in an election, that election is not credible. So, I think this is the point that we have to see, that this is entirely a sham system which is in operation, but they are being supported fully by Pakistan, and behind Pakistan is the USA, and they are trying to manipulate the situation so that they get a Jamaat-e-Islami regime in Bangladesh. When that Jamaat-e-Islami regime comes in Bangladesh, it will be a repeat of the pre-1971 situation. Where the Razakars and Jamaat-e-Islami, they are in power. You have Pakistan 1 in the west and you have Pakistan 2 in the east. And that is going to be very difficult for India, very dangerous, and a huge security threat for India.
Adding to these students' university elections in Dhaka, even the students, that front which had gotten together, the students against discrimination, ma'am, they lost everywhere. I mean, they have already been fragmented. They're no longer united. They have been fragmented. But even those leaders who were at the forefront have lost. So and Jamaat-e-Islami, as you said, has taken over. So what I'm trying, and we have discussed this earlier also, that Jamaat usually has a vote bank of around 8 to 10%, which is consistent. So if they take over, what does it mean for the future of Bangladesh?
Well, yes, you're quite right. Let me explain about what you say about the students having been, the students against discrimination. This entire organization, so-called Students Against Discrimination, was really a fake organization. The real control was always in the hands of the Jamaat-e-Islami and the Islami Chhatra Shibir, which is the students' wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami. They are the ones who really won the election, not the Jamaat-e-Islami, but its students' wing, the Islami Chhatra Shibir. Now, they were the ones in control during the so-called students' discrimination. Of course, a lot of genuine students joined, thinking, yes, we want the quota reform movement to end. Actually, the quota reform movement the quotas had already been ended by Sheikh Hasina herself, and she had withdrawn them. Somebody brought a case and then reinstalled the quotas, and she had said, I'm going to Supreme Court to again remove the quotas. And on 21st July, 2 weeks before Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave Dhaka, the Supreme Court again annulled the quotas, so the quotas didn't exist. But still, the fake news was there that they are there, and these genuine students had joined. But the moment the Supreme Court verdict came that the quotas have been abolished, a lot of genuine students dropped out and said, look, now we have no grudge with the government. All our problems, we'll do dialogue with them. And you had only the Jamaat-e-Islami in control. They were the ones, the Islami Chhatra Shibir and Jamaat-e-Islami, they were the ones doing the violence. They were the ones doing the killings. And they were the ones who actually then pushed out. And then from among them, some of the student leaders who were there as fake student leaders, they have now formed the NCP, the National Citizens Party, which is known as the King's Party, which is supported by Muhammad Yunus. And this party also was nowhere. So the Islami Chhatra Shibir is determined that only they and their parent organization, Jamaat-e-Islami, only they can rule. Nothing else will work for them. And that is what they have been doing. They have been actually taking control absolutely by violence. At one point, this NCP was wanting to even desecrate the mausoleum of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in Tungipara, in its town. And they were, walking towards there. And since they have arrested all the Awami League leaders, they thought, oh, nobody will come and oppose us. But the common man arose as one to actually oppose the NCP and prevent them from reaching Sheikh Mujib's mausoleum and desecrating it. Then the army came out and shot individuals dead. The army who was promised, who had told Sheikh Hasina left the country because the army told her, no, we cannot shoot on civilians, and so you must leave the country. Now here the army is shooting on civilians because the NCP is telling them to do so. And I believe that it is Muhammad Yunus who personally called up the local commanders and, said, no, you have to protect the NCP. So I think this is the important point to realize, that the people of Bangladesh do not support what is going on. Absolutely not. And it is because the Jamaat-e-Islami realizes that what they expected was their fair share of the vote, which is that if the BNP is being sidelined, the Awami League is being banned, then every vote will come to us. But the people don't want to vote them. The people of Bangladesh are very religious. They respect their own religion, and that is absolutely fine. But they don't want a Jamaat-e-Islami Islamist government. They don't want a Wahhabi government. They are proud of their secularism. They are proud of their own constitution. They are proud of the fact that they had a liberation war and they fought for their freedom. They don't want to give up all those freedoms. And they certainly don't want to give it up to Pakistan, who has committed genocide. There is not a single family in Bangladesh who has not suffered during 1971, deaths and killings and rapes and all of that. So it is, an attempt to actually, pull wool over the eyes of the world. And what India has been doing, our media has been doing, our government has been doing, is been pointing out what is happening in Bangladesh and what a dangerous security threat it is. And, even whether it is I don't know whether you remember, but this time, last week in New York, when Mohammed Yunus was there, he had taken 100-member delegation with him.
Okay.
100 members. Unbelievable. Even the official list was 62, but I believe the actual was 104, which included his 2 daughters and all kinds of people. And of course, very, very few from the BNP, mostly advisors in his government and his NCP supporters, the so-called fake student leaders and others. 100. Imagine a country where he has promised austerity. His first thing was austerity. And then he takes his 100-member delegation, including leaders of the Jamaat. And then there were protests against him outside the UN. The UN, the Bangladeshi diaspora, so many people collected outside the UN protesting against his presence there and pointing out to what he's been doing in Bangladesh. But the Naib Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, the number 2 man in the Jamaat-e-Islami, he made a horrendous speech in Bangladesh. He said that he's going to do Ghazwa-e-Hind on India.
Okay.
Imagine declaring in New York that he's going to do Ghazwa-e-Hind on India. And he said, I've got 5 million youth. My members, he says, Jamaat-e-Islami, 5 million youth. And they're going to do Ghazwa-e-Hind. They will take just attack India. I mean, it is unbelievable what is going on. America didn't say anything about it. The Asim Munir, the field marshal, the self-created field marshal of Pakistan, he says the same thing in Florida in a so-called private meeting, threatening all kinds of death and destruction to India. Nobody, not a sound from the government of America. So I think it's very, worrying, very worrisome, India to take note of all these strange happenings that are going on. And India has to prepare to defend itself and prepare to continue our internal growth, to continue our internal strength, and be prepared that what kind of a situation we are going to face. I think our strong view, our strong push has to be what the government of India said in a very recent statement about a week or 10 days ago, that India wants free, fair, credible and inclusive elections in Bangladesh. And we have to insist upon that, because whoever comes to election under free, fair and inclusive election, it is fine by us. We will be able to deal with them on the basis of mutual respect, on the basis of mutual benefit, and on the basis of respect for each other's sensitivities, and we will do that. And we are prepared to do that. But this kind of a situation where Mohammed Yunus, comes and talks about, he goes to China and talks about giving the Northeast to China and says, oh, come to Bangladesh, we are controlling the Northeast. Come and then we will be able to give you anything you want in the Northeast. These kind of absolutely anti-Indian statements are unacceptable. And the kind of anti-Indianism that was thought to be created within Bangladesh also, all the while that this, what was going on, they're calling Sheikh Hasina fascist and then she's supported by India. But I mean, state for everybody's knowledge that India has supported Sheikh Hasina as a government which respected India's security interests.
True.
I was there when Khalida Zia was the Prime Minister, and she did not respect India's security interests at all. Every support to every Indian insurgent group from the Northeast was being given by the then government of Bangladesh. Pakistan was acting in total cahoots with the Khalida Zia government. And they were coming to Bangladesh and then going into India for their terrorist attacks. Every terrorist attack in those days had a Bangladeshi footprint because they were coming there and then going into India. And so we saw what it was like, what was happening at that time. We know what is their target. We know what they want. from Bangladesh. We know why they want control. And then you have the American interference in Myanmar as well, with the Arakan army and so on. That is creating another unrest in Myanmar. So it's a very volatile situation, security situation for India. When Sheikh Hasina was there for 15 years, she accepted India's security concerns. She said, I do not want any illegal insurgent groups to be here. This is not good for the people of Bangladesh. She handed over Anup Chetia and she stopped all their businesses. And for 15 years, the Northeast even forgot what it was like to have unrest.
True.
They had peace and development and growth, and everything was going fine until this happened, And then you have this situation. So it's a very unnatural situation, supported what's happening in Bangladesh being supported by external powers, beginning with Pakistan.
One final question, ma'am, about the Chittagong Hill Tracts. When we were growing up, there was an insurgency. We remember an insurgency we used to read in the newspapers in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. We're not sure as to what exactly it was all about. But violence, and there was some peace plan after that, but violence keeps on recurring. So and then the Bangladeshis obviously blame India and Sheikh Hasina for the violence, for the fascism, for the supply of arms. But what exactly is the problem in the Chittagong Hill Tract?
You see, the Chittagong Hill Tracts is a very important region of Bangladesh. Of course, it was a region which should never have been with Bangladesh because East Pakistan was supposed to have only the Muslim majority regions, and Chittagong Hill Tracts was absolutely not among those regions. But in the Radcliffe plan, it was given to Bangladesh because they wanted a port, they wanted Chittagong port, and Chittagong is the headquarters of Chittagong Hill Tracts and so on. But again, under East Pakistan, between 47 and 71, the tribals were treated very poorly. And their land was taken away. There was a big Rangamati dam built over there. So many, even the capital of the kingdom, all the historical sites, they were all underwater. And there was great unrest among the hill tribe people because their rights were not being respected. And they have tribal rights. They have land rights given to them. And even the UN recognized the land rights of the aboriginals, of the original, the Adivasis, and so on. And so this unrest came to a real height. It continued actually after the formation of Bangladesh because the demand for their land rights was continuing. But under Sheikh Hasina, between 71 and 1996, very little happened. But then under Sheikh Hasina, when she was Prime Minister, she did an accord with the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord was signed under Sheikh Hasina with the PCJSS, which is the principal party of that region. And peace was declared because the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord was a good accord. It recognized the land rights of the tribal people, and it said that we will respect the land rights. The land which has been taken away will be given back, and so on. And they will be given facilities, including jobs, etc. All that was there. So it was a good accord. It brought peace for quite some time. And under Sheikh Hasina, when she was there, she lost in 2001. But during her time, there was complete peace. But there was no implementation. Even between 2001, 2006, when Khalda Zia came back as Prime Minister, there was complete lack of implementation, and the unrest again began to grow. The dissatisfaction began to grow. In fact, under Khalda Zia, the move to settle Bengali settlers, because the Chittagong Hill Tracts is in many ways a very comparatively sparsely inhabited area, highly wooded, densely forested, so very few people. So great effort to push, the effort was to push more and more Bengali settlers there to change the demographics of the region. And that has always been one of the greatest grouses and sources of unhappiness of the local people, because they say that this is changing the demographics of the region. And then they even blame the army of assisting the Bengali settlers and not protecting the rights of the Chittagong Hill Tracts people, of all the, the tribes and the aboriginal there. So because of that, the unrest has grown into huge proportions. And I think it is really beginning to burst forth again after Sheikh Hasina left in 2024, because they were the people, they were equally, they're being raped, they're being lynched, their land is being taken away again. They're suffering as much as the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Christians and all the other people, including the Sufis and the Ahmadiyyas. So with the result that this has been very serious. And 2 weeks ago, it broke again. Again, a young girl in Khamtachari, and all that the Home Advisor could do was blame India. That's all. That's the only, just like Pakistan. It's becoming another clone of Pakistan. Anything goes wrong, blame India. Don't say anything that we've done anything wrong.
Mm.
And this is what is continuing. So it's a very, very unfortunate and an unnatural situation in that. And I think India needs to take it up very, very strongly. Very strongly. It needs to be taken up. And the rights of the people have to be ensured.
So we'll have to conclude on that part, ma'am. But Bangladesh, as it keeps on evolving, we'll keep an eye on this, and I'll seek your further guidance and your support to just keep
Thank
an
you.
eye on Bangladesh and let the world exactly know what is going on. Thank
Yes,
you
that
so
is very,
much. Thank you for
thank you.
sparing time. Thank you.